It is the most recognizable face in all of human history. More famous than the Mona Lisa. More studied than the face of Caesar. More photographed than any queen, empress, or goddess who ever lived. And for over a century, we thought we understood it. We were wrong. Because hidden inside this 3,300-year-old sculpture, buried beneath layers of painted plaster, inside a face so perfect it seems almost impossible, scientists recently found something that no one expected. Something that changes everything we thought we knew. Not just about Nefertiti, but about the people who made her, and the people who wanted the world to forget her. Stay with me. Because what we are about to uncover is not just an archaeological discovery. It is a conspiracy that reaches across 3,000 years. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture ancient Egypt. Not the Egypt of Hollywood. Not golden sunsets over pyramids and men in white linen. Picture something darker. Something more political. More dangerous. It is 1345 BC. The Nile Valley shimmers under a sun so fierce it bleaches the desert white. The city of Akhetaten, a city built almost overnight in the middle of nowhere, rises from the sand like a fever dream. This is no ordinary city. It was commanded into existence by a pharaoh so radical, so controversial, so utterly unlike any ruler before him, that future generations would spend centuries trying to erase his very name from history. His name was Akhenaten. And beside him stood a woman. A woman who may have been the most powerful human being alive on Earth at that moment. Her name was Nefertiti. And in the year 1912, deep in the ruins of that abandoned city, a German archaeologist named Ludwig Borchardt crawled into the rubble of a sculptor's workshop and pulled her out of the darkness. The bust was so perfect, so lifelike, so hauntingly beautiful, that Borchardt reportedly stared at it for a long moment before writing in his field journal, just 4 words. Description is useless. See, that face has haunted the world ever since. But here is the question nobody has truly answered. Why does she look like that? Not the beauty. Not the elegance. Something else. Something about the bust has never quite added up. And recently, very recently, a team of researchers decided to look closer than anyone ever had before. Using technology that didn't exist even 20 years ago, they scanned, analyzed, and essentially dissected the most famous face in the ancient world. And what they found was a secret. One that Nefertiti herself may have taken to her grave. One that her enemies tried to bury. One that history, it seems, was never meant to reveal. Let's go back to the beginning. The year is 1912. December. The Egyptian desert. Ludwig Borchardt, working under the German Oriental Society, is excavating the ruins of what was once Akhetaten, the city we now call Amarna. The city had been abandoned for over 1,000 years. Nobody lived there. Nobody wanted to. The ancient Egyptians themselves had turned their backs on this place, dismantled its temples stone by stone, and done their best to pretend it never existed. But the desert preserves things. In the workshop of a sculptor named Thutmose, the royal chief sculptor of Pharaoh Akhenaten's court, Borchardt's team begins sifting through the debris. And there, lying face down in the sand, partially shielded by a fallen wall that had collapsed just right, was the bust of Nefertiti. She was intact. Almost perfectly intact. The painted limestone shimmered. The colors were still vivid after 33 centuries. The elegant elongated neck. The crown. The sharp jawline. The lips slightly parted as if she were about to speak. There was only one anomaly. The left eye had no inlay. The right eye, perfect. A dark iris, whites, even a tiny dot of wax to simulate the reflection of light. A masterpiece of ancient optical illusion. But the left eye socket, empty. Dark. Hollow. Archaeologists assumed it was simply unfinished. A workshop piece never completed. Maybe a model for other craftsmen to copy. Maybe a training tool. Maybe it was damaged before it was ever installed anywhere. But what if that explanation was too convenient? What if the missing eye was not an accident? What if it was a message? Before we go further, tell me in the comments, which country are you watching this from? I love seeing where this community reaches around the world. Now, let's talk about what we actually know about Nefertiti, because the facts alone are staggering. Her name in ancient Egyptian means, the beautiful one has come. Or some scholars translate it as, the beautiful one has arrived. Either way, it is a name that sounds less like a person and more like an announcement, a proclamation, as if her very existence was meant to be declared. She appears in the historical record around 1348 BC, already married to Amenhotep IV, who would soon rename himself Akhenaten. From the very beginning of his reign, she is not depicted the way Egyptian queens were traditionally shown. Egyptian queens were important, respected, ceremonially powerful. But Nefertiti was something else entirely. In temple carvings and relief art from Amarna, she appears alongside her husband not as a symbolic consort but as an active co-ruler. She is shown smiting Egypt's enemies, a posture reserved exclusively for pharaohs. She wears the double crown. She performs religious rituals independently. She drives chariots. In some images, she is depicted at the same scale as Akhenaten, which in Egyptian artistic convention meant equal power. No Egyptian queen had ever been shown this way. Not before. Not after. She was, in every practical sense of the word, a co-pharaoh. And then something happened. Around year 12 of Akhenaten's reign, roughly 1337 BC, Nefertiti vanishes from the record. Just gone. No death announcement. No burial rite mentioned. No explanation offered. One moment she is everywhere, on temple walls and inscriptions in royal decrees. And then she simply ceases to exist in the official record. Some historians have called this the greatest disappearing act in ancient history. Where did she go? Did she die? Was she killed? Did she become someone else? That last possibility, the one that sounds most like fiction, may be the one closest to the truth. To understand what might have happened to Nefertiti, you need to understand the world she was living in. Akhenaten didn't just rule Egypt. He tried to reinvent it. In one of the most radical acts in ancient history, he abolished the entire Egyptian religious pantheon. Thousands of gods, Osiris, Isis, Horus, Ammonius, Ra, all stripped of their power and their temples. Their names were chiseled off monuments. Their priests were disbanded. Their income cut off. Akhenaten declared that there was only one god, the Aten, the solar disk, the physical sun itself. This was not just theology. This was politics. The priests of Ammonius had accumulated more wealth and power than the pharaoh himself. By abolishing their god, Akhenaten destroyed their power base in a single stroke. He built an entirely new capital city in a location that was sacred to no one, a blank slate where he and he alone controlled the divine. It was, in modern terms, a coup d'état disguised as a religious revolution, and Nefertiti was at the center of it. She wasn't just his wife. She was his ideological partner, his enforcer. Some scholars believe she was the architect of the Aten revolution more than Akhenaten himself. That it was her mind, her political genius, that shaped what history would call the Amarna period. If that's true, then when the revolution eventually collapsed, when Akhenaten died and the old priests came crawling back to power, Nefertiti would not have been simply a grieving widow. She would have been enemy number one. Here is where history gets strange and dark. After Akhenaten's death, the circumstances of which remain deeply unclear, possibly violent, possibly a plague, possibly a palace coup, Egypt lurched into chaos. There were at least two short-lived pharaohs in rapid succession. Scholars have debated their identities for over a century. One of them went by the name Smenkhare, ruled briefly. Almost nothing is known about this person. No clear imagery. No confirmed tomb. A ghost pharaoh. And then there was Nefertiti, a female pharaoh or possibly a male ruler with a feminine name. Again shadowy. Unclear. Disputed. And then came the boy king, Tutankhamun, who, when he took the throne, immediately reversed every single one of Akhenaten's reforms, moved the capital back to Thebes, restored the old gods, had the name of Akhenaten and Nefertiti systematically erased from every monument in Egypt. The Amarna period was not just ended, it was damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory, an ancient practice in which a ruler's name and image are destroyed so thoroughly that they cease to exist in the afterlife as well as history. Someone wanted Nefertiti gone. Not just removed from power. Gone. Erased. Unmade. But they couldn't destroy the bust. Because no one knew it existed. It was buried under a fallen wall. In an abandoned workshop. In a city that nobody visited for 3,000 years. And so her face survived. Now, this is where the science enters. And this is where everything gets deeply, genuinely strange. In 2009, a team of researchers at the Charite Hospital in Berlin got access to the Nefertiti bust for an unprecedented CT scan analysis. This was not a casual X-ray. This was a full three-dimensional computed tomography scan, the same technology used to image patients in modern hospitals, applied to a 3,300-year-old sculpture. What they expected to find was limestone, painted surface, maybe some cracks or repairs underneath. What they actually found stunned them. The bust was not one layer. There was two. Beneath the outer layer of painted limestone plaster, the face the world knows, was a second, inner core. An entirely separate sculpture, made of a different material with slightly different proportions. And the inner face did not match the outer face. The inner sculpture showed small differences that the outer layer deliberately concealed. A slight bump on the nose, smoothed out in the final version. Creases around the corners of the mouth, eliminated. Signs some researchers suggest of age, of imperfection, of a real human face rather than an idealized one. In other words, the Nefertiti bust was not a single artwork. It was a correction. Someone, almost certainly the sculptor Thutmose himself, had first carved or cast a portrait that was more realistic, more accurate, more human. And then, deliberately, they had coated it in plaster and repainted a more idealized version over the top. They had hidden the real face of Nefertiti inside the famous one. What? More perfect, more divine, less human. This is where the theories divide, and where you need to make a choice about what you believe. One school of thought is straightforward. This was simply craft. Sculptors built up layers. They corrected. They refined. The inner layer was a sketch. The outer layer was the final masterpiece. Nothing sinister, just art. But there are scholars, serious ones with serious credentials, who find this explanation deeply unsatisfying. Because the changes weren't random. They weren't just technical refinements. The outer layer is younger than the inner layer. More perfect, more divine, less human. The inner layer shows a woman who was aging, who had lived, who carried the weight of being the most powerful woman in the ancient world for over a decade. The outer layer shows an immortal. And here is the crucial question. Who commissioned the correction? If Nefertiti was still alive when the outer layer was applied, she could have ordered it herself. A queen demanding she be depicted at her most glorious. Standard royal vanity, not even vanity really. Just political symbolism. But what if she wasn't alive when it was done? What if the outer layer was applied after her death? What if someone, Akhenaten grieving his partner? A loyalist in hiding? Thutmose himself, preserving her memory? Decided to seal away the real, aging, mortal Nefertiti inside a shell of eternal beauty? What if the bust was a kind of tomb? A sarcophagus for a face? If you enjoy real historical mysteries like this, the kind that nobody taught you in school, the kind that change how you see the ancient world, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We go deep on these stories every week, and we are just getting started. Now let's talk about the missing eye. Because the CT scan didn't just reveal the double layer. It revealed something about that hollow left socket that changes the entire narrative. For decades, the standard explanation was unfinished. Borchardt himself proposed it. The bust was a sculptor's model, a reference piece, not a finished product meant for display. The left eye was simply never completed. But the CT scan found evidence of a crystal inlay inside the right eye that was carefully, deliberately engineered. The inlay fits the socket with extraordinary precision. It was not mass-produced. It was custom-made for this specific face. So why would a sculptor go to such extraordinary lengths to perfect one eye, and completely ignore the other? One theory that has circulated among Egyptologists, quietly because it is difficult to prove, is that the missing inlay was removed. Deliberately. Not during the 3,300 years the bust lay buried. Not in 1912 when Borchardt found it. But at some point during Nefertiti's own lifetime or immediately after. In ancient Egyptian symbolism, eyes were not merely organs of sight. They were the seat of the soul. To damage or remove the eyes of a person's image was, in Egyptian belief, to attack that person's Ka, their spiritual double, their life force. It was a form of magical assault. An act of desecration rooted in the belief that representation and reality were fundamentally connected. Destroying someone's image was, in a very real theological sense, destroying them. Is it possible that the left eye was removed as an act of ritual revenge? An act of symbolic murder committed against a woman who had already been erased from history but who her enemies still feared? Can you feel afraid of a dead queen? In ancient Egypt? Apparently yes. Let's push further. Because the story does not end with the bust. There is a question that Egyptologists have debated for decades, and that the CT scan results have only intensified. Where is Nefertiti's body? We have her face. We do not have her remains. Her tomb has never been identified with certainty. Her mummy has never been confirmed. Or has it? In 2003, Egyptologist Joanne Fletcher of the University of York announced that she had potentially identified Nefertiti's mummy. It was one of 3 unidentified female mummies found in a side chamber of tomb KV35 in the Valley of the Kings, a tomb that had been reused as a cache for royal mummies during the Third Intermediate Period. One of those mummies, known as the younger lady, showed signs of violent injury. Her face had been deliberately mutilated. Her chest was crushed. Her arm had been broken off. Fletcher argued that the damage was not natural decay. It was deliberate desecration. Someone had attacked this mummy's body with intent. And she believed the younger lady was Nefertiti. The Egyptian authorities, led at the time by the formidable Zahi Hawass, rejected the claim publicly and forcefully. Fletcher was temporarily banned from working in Egypt. The identification was declared premature. But DNA analysis of the younger lady, conducted in 2010, revealed something extraordinary. She was almost certainly the biological mother of Tutankhamun. Tutankhamun's mother. If Nefertiti was Tutankhamun's mother, and this is disputed, because his parentage remains one of the great unresolved questions of Egyptology, then the identification holds. Some scholars argue that Nefertiti was a secondary wife of Akhenaten who bore Tutankhamun before being elevated to chief queen. Others argue she was his stepmother only. But here is what the DNA confirmed without ambiguity. The younger lady was related to Akhenaten. She was part of that royal bloodline. And her body had been violently desecrated. By whom? When? What? Was this the woman who changed the world? The woman who stood beside a revolutionary pharaoh, who worshipped a single god in a world of thousands, who ruled Egypt as a co-pharaoh and then vanished from history. Was this her? Mutilated. Hidden. Buried among the dead like contraband? And now we reach the layer of this story that is perhaps the darkest of all. Because this is not just about a mummy in a tomb. This is about what happens to powerful women who lose the protection of power. Think about the timeline. Nefertiti is everywhere during Akhenaten's reign. Triumphant. Divine. The most depicted female figure in all of Egyptian art. Akhenaten dies, year 17 of his reign, approximately 1336 BC. The circumstances, unknown. Within a decade his capital is abandoned. His temples are dismantled. His name is being erased from every monument in Egypt. And his queen, his partner, his co-ruler, the woman who helped him reshape the most powerful civilization on earth, disappears so completely that for 3,000 years, no one even knew what she looked like. Until a German archaeologist pulled her out of the sand in 1912. Now ask yourself, what does it take to erase a person that thoroughly? Not just removing their name from monuments. That's political. That's systematic, but it can be done by decree. No. Truly erasing someone requires something more personal, more intentional, more human in its cruelty. It requires destroying every record of their existence that might survive. Burning scrolls, breaking statues, hammering faces off reliefs, turning what was once a living, breathing, ruling queen into a blank space in history. And whoever did this to Nefertiti almost succeeded. Almost. Because they didn't know about the workshop of Thutmose. They didn't know about the bust lying face down under the rubble. They didn't know that the most iconic face of the ancient world was quietly waiting, 3 meters beneath the desert sand, for someone to find her. There is one more discovery. One more secret hidden inside the bust that the CT scan revealed, and this one is perhaps the most personal of all. The inner layer of the bust, the more realistic inner portrait, the one showing Nefertiti as she actually looked, contains evidence of what researchers described as a slight asymmetry in the face. Not a flaw, not a mistake, a natural asymmetry of the kind that every human face has. One eye slightly higher than the other. One cheek slightly fuller. The reality of a living face rather than the geometry of an ideal one. But there's more. Around the nose and mouth of the inner portrait, researchers found subtle indicators that the sculptor had paid very close attention to the texture of skin, to the natural hollows that form around the eyes with age, to the gentle compression of features under the weight of years. This was not a young woman's face on the inner portrait. This was a mature woman. A woman who had lived, who had aged, who had possibly experienced grief and stress, and the physical toll of years at the apex of the most demanding civilization on earth. The outer portrait, the one the world knows, erased all of that. It replaced the lived-in face with something timeless, something permanent. Someone looked at the real Nefertiti, aging, mortal, human, and decided that the world should instead see something divine. They didn't just make art. They made a statement. They said, this woman is not allowed to be ordinary. She is not allowed to be mortal. She must be eternal or she must be nothing. And so they made her eternal. In limestone. In paint. In the careful hand of a master sculptor who sealed her real face inside a mask of perfection and left it for the centuries to find. But here is where the story refuses to end cleanly. Because in 2016, British Egyptologist Nicholas Reeves put forward a theory so explosive, so specific, so architecturally detailed that it sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. He had been studying high-resolution scans of the walls inside Tutankhamun's tomb, KV62, the most famous tomb in the world. And he noticed something in the painted plaster of the northern wall. Beneath the paint, beneath the plaster. Barely visible to the naked eye but undeniable in the high-resolution imagery. A seam. Crack. The outline of a hidden doorway. Reeves proposed that Tutankhamun's tomb was not originally built for Tutankhamun. It was too small for a pharaoh. The layout was wrong. The decorations were hastily done, unusual for a royal burial. His conclusion: the tomb was originally built for someone else, and Tutankhamun was buried in the outer chamber when he died unexpectedly young. And behind that sealed northern wall? In a chamber that no modern human has entered? Reeves believed Nefertiti, the original occupant of the tomb. The queen who had been buried there with full honors. The queen whose presence was then literally walled off and painted over when the political winds changed. When her name became dangerous. When her memory became a liability. The Egyptian authorities approved a series of radar scans of the tomb walls. The results were inconclusive. Contested. One team said they found evidence of voids behind the wall. Another team said they found nothing. The search continues. The wall has not been opened. And so Nefertiti, as she has always done, waits. Behind a wall. Behind a layer of plaster. Behind a painted face that isn't quite her own. Waiting for someone to break through and find the truth. And what is that truth? Here is what we can say with confidence. The most famous face in the ancient world is a composite. A construction. A layer of idealized beauty painted over a real, aging human woman. The outer portrait the world fell in love with in 1912 is, in some profound sense, a fiction, a deliberate act of myth-making performed on the real Nefertiti by someone who decided she should be remembered as a goddess rather than a human. She was a woman of enormous, almost incomprehensible power. She co-ruled the wealthiest and most sophisticated civilization on Earth. She helped engineer one of the most radical religious transformations in human history. She may have ruled Egypt alone for a period, as pharaoh in her own right, under a different name, after her husband's death. And then she was erased. Her city abandoned. Her name chiseled away. Her image destroyed. Her body, if it is indeed the younger lady in KV35, beaten and mutilated by hands that feared even her corpse. She survived as a face. A beautiful, perfect, hollow-eyed face in a sculptor's workshop that happened to fall in just the right direction when the roof came down. 3,000 years later, we pulled her from the darkness and gasped. We still don't know who she really was. We still don't know where her tomb is. We still don't know what she looked like, truly, the real inner face, the one that the sculptor sealed away. We still don't know what happened to her at the end. And perhaps that is the most haunting thing of all about Nefertiti. She survived history's attempt to destroy her. She outlasted the priests who erased her name. She outlasted the pharaohs who dismantled her city. She outlasted 3 millennia of sand and silence. And even now, even with all of our technology, our CT scanners and DNA labs and ground-penetrating radar, she remains, in the most essential way, a mystery. The face is there. The woman is not. And what is behind that wall? That is the question that keeps archaeologists awake at night. That is the question that may never be answered in our lifetime. Tutankhamun's tomb is too great. That is the question that keeps archaeologists awake at night. That is the question that may never be answered in our lifetime. The Egyptian government moves slowly, carefully, with the weight of protecting the most precious archaeological site on Earth. They may never open that wall. They may decide the risk to Tutankhamun's tomb is too great. And if they do open it, if they break through that northern wall and find a chamber on the other side, who will be waiting there? An empty room? Evidence of an ancient robbery? Artifacts of an unnamed queen? Or the face that matches the bust? The real Nefertiti, finally at rest, finally in her proper place, finally acknowledged after 3,000 years of deliberate forgetting? I don't know. Nobody knows. And maybe that's exactly as Nefertiti intended it. She was, by all accounts, a woman who understood power. Who understood that mystery is its own form of authority. That what you conceal can be as powerful as what you reveal. She hid a face inside a face. She hid a name inside other names. She hid herself inside history's greatest act of erasure. And she is still here. Still watching. With one perfect eye and one dark, empty socket pointed straight at the future. What is she looking for? And what topic do you want to explore next? Should we dive into another Egyptian queen? Perhaps Hatshepsut, who dressed as a male pharaoh and built an empire? Or should we turn our focus to a pharaoh, Ramesses II, who may have been the pharaoh of the Exodus? Drop your vote in the comments. I read every single one. The bust of Nefertiti currently resides in the Neues Museum in Berlin, Germany. Egypt has repeatedly requested its return. Germany has repeatedly declined. The argument over who owns the most famous face in the ancient world continues. Another layer of politics wrapped around a woman who spent her entire existence at the center of power struggles she may not have chosen. The northern wall of KV-62 remains sealed. The younger lady mummy remains unidentified. And somewhere, perhaps 3 meters beneath the sand of a city the ancient Egyptians tried to forget, there may be answers we have not yet found. Perhaps we are not meant to find them. Perhaps the beautiful one, having arrived so many thousands of years ago, has decided, in her own way on her own terms, that she is not ready to leave.